Steps to war. In this lecture, I'm going to address Virginia SOL US 2.7a, where students will be able to analyze knowledge of the major causes and effects of American involvement in World War II by identifying the causes and events that led to American involvement in the war, including the attack on Pearl Harbor. A couple of essential questions that I want students to be able to answer. These essential questions include: how did post-World War I Europe set the stage for World War II? How did the rise of fascism affect world events following World War I? And how did American policy toward events in Europe and Asia change over time? Now, the aftermath of World War I. After World War I, much of Europe descended into political instability and economic devastation. Germany, for example, suffered because of the high war debt that the Allies forced upon it after the war. And in fact, a worldwide depression ensued that included high inflation and massive unemployment that created political opportunities for fascist leaders to arise, especially in Germany. Here in this picture you can see demonstrations against the Versailles Treaty outside of the Reichstag in Germany, and people in Germany were very upset. The Germans did not actually feel as though they truly lost World War I. After all, no country set foot inside their country during the war, so they didn't believe they had completely lost. And the reason they went to the peace conference in the first place was they believed they would have a say, which they weren't given at all. Now, fascism is a political philosophy in which total power is given to a dictator and individual freedoms are denied. And one of the reasons it was allowed to arise had to do with problems in those countries where it did arise. Especially in Germany, there were economic problems like overinflation. The money became worthless. They were printing so much of it. As you can see in the picture here, the money was actually being used as fuel. It was more valuable as fuel than it was as actual notes to be exchanged for goods. So that was one of those things that it led to an opportunity, a window that would allow fascism to arise in Germany. Similar circumstances happened in other countries. Fascist dictators included Adolf Hitler in Germany, Benito Mussolini in Italy, and Hideki Tojo in Japan. These dictators led the countries that became known as the Axis powers. In the 1930s, fascist leaders began to test their strength by building up their militaries and asserting control over nearby territories. In 1931, for example, Japan conquered Manchuria in northern China. As these dictators arose, the United States attempted to remain isolated from European conflicts. Basically, our nation believed that it didn't want to get involved in another European conflict since it didn't seem like we were able to affect the peace process very much after the last major conflict. Well, in 1935, we start seeing more and more aggression from these totalitarian regimes or ruling groups that have total power over their entire country. Italy, under Benito Mussolini, invaded Ethiopia in Africa. In 1936, Adolf Hitler moves German troops into the Rhineland on the French border. Hitler and Mussolini formed the Rome-Berlin Axis, which is an alliance. Germany, under the Versailles Treaty, was forbidden from having troops in the Rhineland, which bordered on France, and it was a very resource-rich area. When Germany was having a hard time paying back France in the 1920s, France actually marched troops into Germany. When Germany marched troops into the Rhineland, directly violating the treaty, they were basically saying, hey, we don't agree with this treaty, and we're doing everything we can to basically make the treaty as though it never existed. the growth of the German military, the buildup of the military, is part of this denial of the Versailles Treaty, or refusal to obey the Versailles Treaty, or the terms of it. In 1937, Japan invaded China. In 1938, Germany invaded Austria, marched in what was known as the Anschluss. And later that year, the Munich Agreement between France and Great Britain, Germany and Italy, France and Great Britain agreed to allow Germany to have the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia, which were bordering lands that had predominantly German-speaking people in them. In return, Adolf Hitler promised to stop seeking more territory. And in fact, in the picture on the left, you have Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain of Great Britain waving a piece of paper declaring peace in our time. He truly believed, that he helped avert a world war. 1939, Germany conquers Czechoslovakia, and Germany and the Soviet Union enter into a secret alliance. Germany and the Soviet Union promised not to attack each other. And then this is later followed by a German blitzkrieg, or lightning war attack into Poland that starts World War II. And here in this cartoon, you can see an illustration of the alliance between Germany and the Soviet Union. Fascists have traditionally not embraced communism. While there are many similarities, these are totalitarian regimes. Fascists actually dislike, and that's probably too mild of description. They actually truly hate the communists, and the communists truly hate the fascists. And so this was an alliance between the Soviet Union and Germany. It was an alliance out of convenience. They wanted to expand their territories, and Poland was the country that was divided up among them. In 1940, Japan joins the Axis powers, and they form what becomes known as the Rome-Berlin-Tokyo Axis alliance. Germany invades Denmark, Norway, Belgium, and France, and then Germany later bombs Great Britain in what is known as the Battle of Britain. And here you can see really some of the movements of German troops going into Norway. Hitler had made a trip to France shortly after France had surrendered. Southern France became known as Vichy France, an independent country, but pretty much what was known as a puppet state. They did whatever Germany told them to. And a big reason for France's quick surrender had to do with wanting to avoid the type of conflict they saw with World War I. And then we have some scenes from the Battle of Britain, where Britain endured numerous air attacks, and London in particular endured a long period of bombing, regular bombing by German bombers over their capital city. In 1941, Germany breaks their treaty with the Soviet Union, and they invade the Soviet Union in June of 1941. But a harsh winter stops the German advance. Congress approves the Lend-Lease Act to lend or lease resources and equipment to the Allies. And on December 7th, the United States fleet at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, is attacked by Japan, and the United States is drawn into World War II. On December 11th, Germany and Italy declare war on the United States, and the United States is officially fully into the war now. So in summary, political and economic conditions in Europe following World War I led to the rise of fascism and to World War II. The rise of fascism threatened peace in Europe and Asia, and as conflict grew in Europe and Asia, American foreign policy evolved from neutrality to direct involvement.